What's up, my real estate clients? It's Rex, and today I want to talk to you about appraisal problems and how we deal with them. If that's something that interests you, hopefully it will, because hopefully we'll sell your house for way more than it's actually worth, and then we'll have to fight with the bank. So stick around. So appraisal problems. Well, in terms of better quality of problems, appraisal problems is definitely a better one, because that means you've sold your home for way more than the bank thinks it's worth, and they're not excited about it. It's kind of a drag. I mean, it's still a problem. Now, our system, the way we do it, we have multiple buyers competing against each other for your home and raising the price up. So we deal with appraisal problems, not on every single home, but for sure, especially if the market's on an incline and going up, then we're gonna be setting new values everywhere we go. We're gonna be resetting market values of entire cities sometimes. So if we sell a home for $1 million and the bank says, no, it's only worth 900, now that buyer has to either bring in the extra money or the seller has to decrease their price by that amount, or we meet somewhere in between. If I have lots of other buyers in backup position, I might call them and say, hey, are you willing to bring in the extra money to cover what the bank isn't willing to pay? And if one of them says yes, then we might contact the buyer we have and say, look, I've got somebody else who's willing to pay that price. You can either cancel out or you can bring in the extra money. So it's all negotiable, right? Now, the best time to handle an appraisal problem is before it starts. Just like every other problem in the world, you know, if you get ahead of it, it makes it a lot easier to deal with when you finally face it. So a couple ways we do that if possible. We will try to negotiate with the buyer to get them to release their appraisal contingency during that moment of highest negotiating position when we're doing all of our negotiations. If it's possible to get them to release the appraisal contingency, it becomes much less of a problem later on. Still a problem because, you know, buyers don't want to bring in more money than what the house is, you know, appraised at typically. Sometimes they do. Sometimes it's not an issue. But also because we're looking at their financing and I understand exactly how much money they have down, how much they have in the bank, what their, you know, where the source of funds are coming from, what kind of loan to value they have and all this stuff. I know if a buyer can bring in the extra money typically or not. So if they've released their appraisal contingency and then the appraisal gets cut, you know, the value gets cut by the bank, then I might just sort of expect that they're going to bring in the extra money, and I won't say anything until the realtor calls me up and says, we had an appraisal problem. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I saw that. Yeah, well, you guys are going to bring in the extra money, right? And then I just wait and see what they say. And sometimes they'll say, we don't want to do that, and then we'll try to go, you know, negotiate. Or it's hard to force them to buy a house if they, you know, if they can find a million other ways to get out of it if they really want to get out. It's better to have that in place, but it's still not 100% guarantee. So then we'll start negotiating with them. Maybe we can, if they're not willing to bring it in and they don't have another buyer and they're really the best buyer for the house, but now the appraisal value got cut, then maybe they'll bring in some of the money. And maybe the seller will bring down the price of the house. Let's say we have a $5,000 difference, right? So we sold it for $1 million. The bank's saying it's only worth $995,000, so there's a $5,000 difference. Now the buyer would have to bring in the extra $5,000. If they don't want to, then maybe the seller will reduce the price by $5,000. Or maybe we meet in the middle. The buyer brings it in an extra $2,500 at closing, part of their down payment, and the seller reduces the price of the house by $2,500, and there you go. That's one way to do it. So that's really the best scenario. If I can get them to sign off on the appraisal contingency up front, at least that gives us a lot more wiggle room and a lot more, you know, negotiating position if it ever comes down to it. Typically, I'm going to know if we're going to have appraisal problems, and I can feel it. Like I know we're setting a new standard. I know we're breaking new records and all this kind of stuff. So I'm going to know that, and usually I'll have multiple buyers, and that'll be part of my negotiations on, you know, all the ones that make sense. And so that's it for this episode of me talking about appraisals. If you're ready to sell your home, give us a call. I'll see you at your house. I'll see you at your house.